Hi, hello, and welcome in our video. In this video, we will continue exploring link topics and we will focus on traceability, impact analysis, and link validity. We have a lot of in front of us, so without any further ado, let's jump to the topic number one. Topic number one is traceability. We already know how to create links, and we already know that links represent a relationship between artifacts, and that those links are essential for establishing traceability by creating associations, relationship, and dependencies between requirements as well as establishing visibility. This visibility part is very important. And we already know that the requirements traceability is the ability to describe and follow the life of a requirement in both forwards and backward direction. So, although we know how to create links, and although we know that those links are dependencies or relationship between artifacts, and we know that this traceability is used to follow life of this requirement in forward and backward direction. So we see both of them here. It's still not enough to say I have visibility across those artifacts and relationships. Because yes, I see links here. I can see any links I want here. And I also see how they are linked to upstream or downstream requirements. So satisfied by is linking to downstream requirements. You see from system requirement specification to, and I will hover over, subsystem requirement specification. And also upstream, that means from systems requirement specification to stakeholder requirement specification. But this is very limited view. Isn't it some better view that can show me how this artifact is connected to another artifact, to show me hierarchy of those connected artifacts? And yes, there is a better view. To show you this view, I will use this artifact because you see you have upstream and downstream requirements. I will click on upstream requirements so I have the best view possible. So it took me here, and to show how artifacts are connected together, you can click on this icon and use Open Links Explorer. Excellent. Up here on the right, you have multiple options, but probably the most important one is this one, that you can expand those artifacts to 6 downstream levels, because otherwise you would need to go artifact by artifact and expand it manually, and I don't want to do that, so I will use maximum, hit apply, and you see it was done automatically. You can still click on those plus buttons and hide it, expand it, but you don't have to do it for every artifact one by one. You see there is nothing here. If I will click on plus button, yeah, nothing appears. So there is no artifact that is connected in a downstream fashion. All right, so what do we see here? We see how artifacts are connected together. We see that we have this artifact, this is stakeholder requirement, and the stakeholder requirement is validated by, and you know that validated by link means that this is connected to QM applications, so to test management platform, and those are test cases. You see, this is test case. So the stakeholder requirement has two test cases that are validating this stakeholder requirement. Also, the stakeholder requirement is satisfied by this requirement. So you see this is from systems requirement specification. So lower level requirement is satisfying this higher level requirement. And this systems requirement is satisfied by two different subsystem requirement. You see subsystem requirement specification, subsystem requirement specification. And this specific artifact is again validated by some test case. This is literally the name of the test case I created. And also this artifact is connected to EVM. So there is some task that is connected to this artifact. So this is visibility. Yes, the most important part is to write requirements, to create test cases, to create some tasks. But close second most important part is to connect them together. So to create those links and to establish those relationships, those dependencies, and maybe also constraints. So by creating links, by creating those relationships, we are creating traceability. And when we have traceability, we have this all visibility across all applications, across all requirements. So you see whole life cycle of this requirement so far. So from stakeholder requirement to system requirement to subsystem requirement, and from those subsystem requirements to some test cases that are validating those subsystem requirements. So this is topic number one. This is what I wanted to show you, that you can have visibility across whole life cycle, whether it means across life cycle of artifacts, so throughout the levels, or throughout the applications. So from requirements management to test management to EVM, and you can also link it to architecture. All right, this covers visibility. But when talking about traceability, I also mention that you need traceability to understand the full impact and true cost of proposed changes. So how can DOORS Next help you with impact analysis? For example, if I will go and change this artifact, how will I know what artifacts are affected and how others will know that there was some change, that they need to check if the relationship between those artifacts is still valid, that they need to check if their requirements is still satisfied by, or their requirement still satisfies this requirement, or if there are some test cases that those test cases are still relevant for this requirement. To show this change, to show this effect of this change, there is very simple utility that you can use. By default, this utility is disabled, but enabling this utility is matter just of a few clicks of your administrator. To enable this function, you can just navigate up here to settings, choose manage component properties, and find link validity. And you see, it's so simple, you have just one option. It's show link validity or don't show link validity. By default, the link validity is not shown, and now by clicking here and saving, we will enable it. Excellent. When I will go back here and I will refresh it and open this links explorer again, all right, I will expand it. Excellent. You see, we have this question mark here. This question mark means that I have no idea if those relationships are valid or not. So if I'm sure that those relationships are valid, I will set them all as valid. But this is still not answering my problem. So as I told you, if I would like to change this requirement, so I am making a change, excellent, and now I will again refresh and go to this links explorer again. You see, there is some change. Although these links and these relationships were valid a few seconds ago, now they are marked as I don't know, so as a suspect, because there was a change in this artifact, and now I or my colleagues needs to go and verify if with those changes this requirement is still satisfying this higher level requirement. If yes, I will set it as valid. And again, if this requirement as changed is still satisfied by this lower level requirement. If yes, I will again mark it as valid. And if this requirement is still satisfied by this requirement. And for example, it will be no. Unfortunately, this requirement changed in such a way that this lower level requirement is not satisfying it anymore. So as I am reviewing the changes and as I'm making evaluations, I also saw that these test cases now no longer relevant. So although I see it as valid, you need to go step by step. So you saw that if you make change here, just direct links are made as suspect and not links on all levels. Because as you are evaluating those requirements one by one, then you should also evaluate if those downstream artifacts are still making sense. And maybe you don't even have to do it manually, because if you need to change this requirement to satisfy this requirement, then you made a change, and direct links will also be set as suspect. So, in another words, as you will be making changes so this requirement can still satisfy this changed requirement, then any change of this requirement will again trigger this link validity and put all those links as suspect. And again, if this test case needs to be changed, then all links connected to the test case would be set to suspect. So you see, the change will ripple through all links, all artifacts. So even though the initial change put it just those links as suspect, as you are making changes, then you are going deeper and deeper and making more and more links as suspect, and then you can follow those suspect links and evaluate if another and another and another level is still valid or need to be changed. That's why initial change put just those links as invalid and not all other connected downstream links. Because if there is need for some change, this change will trigger this link validity again and deeper and again and deeper. One problem right now in version 7.02 is that it's overly sensitive. Every change will trigger link validity, and you cannot tell system what change should trigger link validity and what change should not trigger link validity because it's not significant. In version 7.03, it should be changed so custom attributes are supposed to have option that you can set if this custom attribute should trigger link validity change or not. Alright, and this is what I wanted to show you regarding link validity and impact analysis. Alright, and this concludes what I wanted to show you about link validity and impact analysis. There is one more thing I would like to cover, and that's gap analysis, but we will focus on this in a separate video. So I really hope this video was informative for you, and I look forward to see you in our next videos.